Not every wrestling character was born from fantasy. Some were born from real events. A childhood fear, a family tragedy, a moment that changed everything. Each story is different, but they all led to the same destination, creating a personality that would be cheered, feared, mocked, but most importantly, remembered. These are the stories that created those characters. Welcome to Kayfabe Origins. Long before the Hawaiian shirts, before the rocking chair, before the smile that never reached his eyes, there was simply Dan. He grew up in rural Georgia, where every dirt road seemed to lead to either a church or somewhere people told you never to go. One of those roads ended at a place everyone called Mercy's Farm. Nobody knew who officially owned it. The people there never advertised, never invited anyone. Yet somehow, new faces kept arriving each month. Neighbors whispered that people went there to find peace. Some said they found religion. Others said they found purpose. Dan's Aunt Evelyn was one of them. She had always been loud, quick to laugh, impossible to sit still. Then one summer, she changed. She smiled more, spoke softer, started wearing white every day, and every conversation ended the same way. You know what I mean? At first, it sounded harmless. Then everyone from the farm started saying it, the exact same way, the exact same smile. As if they weren't asking a question, they were waiting for permission. Dan asked where she'd been. She simply smiled, "You'll understand someday." One night, Dan followed her. She drove miles beyond the last paved road, past abandoned fields, past rusted fences, until she disappeared through the gates of Mercy's farm. Dan climbed the fence, keeping to the trees. What he found wasn't what he'd expected. No chanting, no ceremonies, no violence. Just dozens of people sitting quietly in rocking chairs, listening. At the center sat an elderly man wearing a faded floral shirt. His voice barely rose above a whisper, yet every person leaned closer. Dan couldn't hear every word, only pieces. Anger is loud. Mercy is quiet. Then the old man smiled. You know what I mean? Every voice answered together. We do. Dan froze. Not because he was afraid, because every person sounded happy. A branch snapped beneath his foot. The old man slowly turned towards the woods. Their eyes met for only a second. The man smiled, then nodded, as though he'd been expecting him all along. Dan ran. He never looked back. The next morning, Mercy's farm was empty. Every rocking chair remained. Every coffee cup still warm. But every person, including Aunt Evelyn, had vanished. The sheriff blamed wanderers. The newspaper blamed rumors. The town stopped talking. Dan never did. Years passed. Dan grew into a giant. Football, wrestling, everywhere he went, people told him who he should become. A cowboy, a powerhouse, a hero, a villain. Each time he became exactly what they wanted, because he'd learned something long ago. The easiest way to survive was to become someone else. But every new identity left him feeling emptier than the last. Every costume came off. Every character faded away, except one memory, the smile. One rainy afternoon, driving alone through Mississippi, Dan pulled into a roadside diner. The waitress greeted him politely. An old country song crackled through the speakers. Everything felt ordinary, until an elderly customer looked up from his coffee. Floral shirt, gentle smile, rocking slowly in his chair. You've been wearing other people's faces your whole life. Dan's blood ran cold. The old man chuckled. I told you, you'd understand someday. Dan blinked. The booth was empty. No coffee, no man. Only the chair, still rocking. That night, Dan stopped trying to invent another wrestling character. Instead, he remembered. The slow voice, the patient smile, the kindness that somehow felt more dangerous than rage. He didn't become that old man. He became what that old man represented. A man who never needed to yell, never needed to threaten, because people followed him willingly. He wore loud Hawaiian shirts, not to stand out, but to make people feel comfortable. He rocked slowly before speaking, because silence made people lean closer. And every conversation ended exactly the way he'd heard it decades before. You know what I mean? Not because he wanted an answer, because by the time someone nodded, he already had them. Years later, fans would remember Waylon Mercy as one of wrestling's strangest characters. Calm, friendly, unsettling. A man whose smile somehow felt more dangerous than a punch. Most believed it was just another gimmick. But somewhere, down an old Georgia dirt road, an empty farm still waits. Its rocking chairs sway whenever the wind blows. And if you listen closely, you might still hear a quiet voice asking, "You know what I mean?" And that is how Dan became Waylon Mercy. But maybe the strangest part of Waylon Mercy's story is what happened after he disappeared. Because while Dan Spivey was creating a character unlike anything wrestling had seen before, another future storyteller was growing up around the very same world. A world of locker rooms, road trips, and larger-than-life personalities. Their paths may have never crossed in the ring, but they all existed in the same universe, the same wrestling family, the same strange world where characters are created, legends are passed down, and ideas find new life years later. And decades after Waylon Mercy sat in his rocking chair with that unsettling smile, another man would bring a different kind of mystery to professional wrestling. A man who understood the power of fear, patience, and storytelling. A man named Bray Wyatt. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it was inspiration. Or maybe, somewhere along the way, they both encountered the same strange magic that turns a person into something unforgettable. And someday, we'll tell that story.